Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Comrade.
All right, first of all, let me just say that I don't actually have much time. I'll be just about 5 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, because we're way past the time. So just to let you know that the paper that I'm about to present has been submitted and it will be part of your package. I really hope you would enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it. And I hope that I would have been able to capture the essence of the topic. I just want to say that I'm very humbled to stand here, very, very humbled, because I have to stand here as someone who wasn't even alive in 1970. As a matter of fact, my mother and my father didn't meet till about 1972. All right, so hopefully they may have been courted and may have been too busy to be in the march. But and to also stand here in front of the heroes, to stand here in front of comrades that I've read about, growing up as a child, that I've heard about. In all of the every time there's a trade union meeting, you always hear these names. Comrade Clyde Muniz, he's here, and even Comrade Kafra Kambon is here, and as well an OWTU educational research officer who is probably even more, I would say, qualified to stand and give this presentation, and that's Jerry Kangley. He's sitting right in the crowd as well. I think it's important to recognize that, and just to say that I'm very humbled to be here. So I'll do my best and try to give justice to the topic of labor and politics. I'll be as short as possible. Basically, what I was trying to I just lost the 3 minutes there. Sometimes it's very easy for us to believe that revolution is not possible. In 2010, it's sometimes easy for us to believe that those ideals, those concepts of social justice, equity, equality for all, is just something of the past, something that you read about, something that good academics write about, but it's not real, it's not tangible. Sometimes it's easy to forget that we are here because of struggles of many that have gone before us. We sometimes forget that people died on this road to where we are today. It's so easy to forget these things because we enjoy many benefits and privileges. Today, we have gained a lot of achievements, but we must always remember that the journey is not finished. We have to remember that there is still a lot to do. And basically what I was hoping to do with this paper is to show the tradition from which we came from, for us to understand that we have an incomplete project. Very, very incomplete. Revolution is not dead. The idea of revolution is not dead. The form it may take may change, but the ideals must still stand because there's still inequity, there's still inequality, there's still injustice. So it can never, ever, ever die. I have 1 more minute. From as early as 1844, 6 years after the abolition of slavery, working people began to organize themselves into an organization. It was called Trinidad Free Laborers Society. That's as far as 166 years ago. That's how long ago we've come to understand that we must self-organize, but self-organize politically. And that's what this paper is about. That you cannot distinguish economic struggle from political struggle. And the fact that in some circles there is the belief that labor and trade unionism must be relegated into some sort of parameters created by those who maintain the status quo. It's just a myth. And our history tells us something very, very, very different. As soon as we began to organize ourselves in 1844, what did the colonial powers do? In 1846, they passed the Masters and Servants Ordinance, immediately to restrict our ability to collectively organize ourselves politically. And I'm happy to say that I just came from a meeting where, and I'm happy to report that the Masters and Servants Ordinance, after 164 years in existence, will be repealed. That legislation was the first in a series of legislation, the first in a series of action taken by the state in order to avoid or in order to deny working class people the capacity and the possibility to organize themselves politically. So as far back as 1897, we already began to, again, organize ourselves in the Trinidad Working Men's Association. And it's very important that that organization, whilst acting as a sort of trade union, it was a political organization. The actions that they took, mass actions, were political actions. Their aspirations were political aspirations. Why? Because they've come to understand that it is only through self-organization, it is only through solidarity, it's only through mass action, it's only through taking destiny into their own hands can they charter a way forward and create a future for their great-great-grandchildren, that which we enjoy today. So that very, very early on, when the mass movement took action in 1919, the strike of 1919, it is a result of that strike that they eventually gave limited adult franchise in the form of representation in 1925. And as from as early as that, you had Cipriani, who was both a labor leader and a political leader, because the Trinidad Working Men's Association became the Trinidad Labour Party. It formed itself into a political organization. And that continued through the 1920s, so that in the 1925 elections, you had several labor leaders who went up for elections. And I want to fast forward because I know I have like 30 seconds left. The labor insurrection of 1937, that's when independence truly happened, not 1962. 1962 was taken away from us. It was taken away from us. And it was done so deliberately to ensure that a new class is in place to ensure the smooth transition from colonialism to neocolonialism. And we have to be very clear that it's not just a myth. It's not just something you read in a bedtime story. It was real. And our foreparents understood that and so continued to organize themselves. As a result of the 1937 insurrection, you had the first elections, 1946, the 1946 elections was the first elections that we've had under universal adult suffrage. And that was the direct result of our 1937 insurrection. We have to start seeing these things, that which we have achieved. The road to freedom has always been on the backdrop of the working class, the mass movement organizing themselves into mass action. And in that 1946 elections, you know what? There were 4 out of the 5 political parties were labor-based. We always talk about Uriah Butler as the father of labor, but he was also the political leader of a political party called the Butler's British Empire Workers' Citizens and Home Party. But there were also other political parties. There was the Trinidad Labour Party. There was the Trade Union Council and the Socialist Party of Trinidad and Tobago. There was the United Front, which was led by Jack Kelchel and others. So the 1946 election, it meant that 4 out of the 5 political organizations were labor-based. But you know what else? They were also progressive, socialist. As a matter of fact, as far back as in the 1925 elections, majority of the people who fought that elections were labor leaders and they considered themselves socialists. So that's another word that we should not be afraid of. And that is another concept, an idea that we should not in any way begin or think is dead. If I fast forward, just the 19th, I have like 10 seconds. Yeah. Okay. I'll be very, very, very quick. So in the 1950s, a move had to be made because what do you think was happening? Labor, progressive labor, with a left socialist agenda was sooner or later going to take control of this country. Let us be clear. They had a vision of home rule, but they had a vision of home rule in the context of federation. There was such clarity, they were so clear. So something had to be done. And what the colonial powers did is they brought in the TUC, Trinidad, the Trade Union Congress from the UK. And they tried to introduce this concept called responsible trade unionism. And it's very important that we understand these concepts because it was there. There they planted the seed that you must divide economic struggle from political struggle. And that left, you know what they say, you cut path for Guti to run? That Guti was the professional middle class, which controlled both the People's National Movement and at that time, the DLP. And that was the beginning of the division of the mass movement into two ethnic camps. And it remained that way until 1970, when the mass movement again burst onto the pages of history and chartered and decided that they must charter a new destiny. Some may argue, and I'm wrapping up now, in my conclusion, I just want to say that there are some ideals that can never ever die. You can try to legislate, you can try in some way or the other to suppress, but you cannot forever control the dreams and aspirations of a people. Our foreparents were so clear, their dreams were so clear, aspirations, and they had absolute conviction in what they were pursuing. That is not dead. It may sometimes fall asleep, it may sometimes take a rest, only waiting and waiting for that spark, when we once again will burst onto the pages of history and take the destiny of our own country and our own people into our own hands. Thank you.